Tasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarupishta Kripasindhubheva Chapatrana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So this chapter is called Beyond the Lower East Side. So this is still the early days when Prabhupada has arrived in New York, and so just the first time Prabhupada's in New York and the beginnings of the movement. So we will start reading. Then the devotees met Mr. Price, an elegantly dressed real estate agent. "You have a handful of stars," Mr. Price told Brahmananda. "You're incorporated as a tax-free religious organization. You have no idea how much money this will save. So many people have to vacate just because they can't pay their taxes. But someone up there is looking after you people, and I have just the place for you and your Swami." Mr. Price showed Brahmananda a handsome 3-story building near St. Mark's Place. It was a good downtown location, near the young people, yet in an area where the uptown people would feel safe. The floors were polished hard wood, all the doors were ornately hand-carved, and it had a large hall suitable for a temple. The Marquis de Lafayette, I don't know if I said that correctly, it seems like a French term.
Marquis Lafayette.
Yeah? What does that mean? It's a name, huh? Okay. The Marquis de Lafayette had stayed here during his visit in 1824, a fact that added to the building's charm and prestige. One evening, Mr. Price visited Prabhupada up in his room. Prabhupada sitting on the floor behind his desk, and Mr. Price sitting on a metal folding chair. Mr. Price wore an elegant suit and a white dress shirt with cufflinks and starched cuffs. His expensive dress, meticulously tanned face and blonde hair, which some devotees thought was a wig, contrasted strangely with the Swami's simplicity. Shri Shri Gaurita ki jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki jai. Mr. Price kept referring to Swamiji as Your Excellency, and he expressed much appreciation of Swamiji's work. He spoke optimistically about how, through his connections, he hoped to save Prabhupada a lot of money and trouble and get him just the place he wanted. Accompanied by a few disciples, Prabhupada went with Mr. Price to see the building. While Mr. Price, the devotees, and the custodian of the house were all talking together in a group, Prabhupada wandered off unnoticed to a corner of the room where there was an old-fashioned sewing machine. He began pressing the treadle and examining the workings of the machine. As Prabhupada rejoined the group, Mr. Price said, "If you can just get $5,000 down, I can get the owners to draw up a contract. $5,000 down and another $5,000 within 2 months. That shouldn't be so difficult." Prabhupada liked the building and told Brahmananda they should purchase it. Brahmananda was inclined to turn the money over right away, but Prabhupada said that first a suitable contract had to be drawn up. Mr. Price talked to the devotees in private, speaking in the Swami's interest and in the interest of the spiritual movement, and he seemed to be promising them something even more than a contract. Perhaps he would give them the building. It didn't make sense that he could give the building, but he told them something like that. He wanted the devotees to think of him as their friend, and he invited them over to his house one evening. When the devotees gathered in his house, sitting stiffly on chairs in his living room, which was lined with bookcases filled not with books, but with 2-dimensional designs depicting rows of books, he continued to flatter them. He praised Hayagriva's writings, and Hayagriva was obviously embarrassed and flattered. He praised everything about the devotees. He also spoke of how his dog had recently died, and said, "The house seems empty without the little fellow." He was an unusual man, effeminate and full of flattery and praises. Prabhupada remained reserved after his first meeting with Mr. Price, though he was interested in getting the building if the proper arrangement could be made. Brahmananda continued to negotiate with Mr. Price, and soon, according to Mr. Price, the owners of the building would be expecting the devotees to give proof of their ability to meet the payments. On Prabhupada's direction, the devotees hired a lawyer to go over the contract. "This Mr. Price is causing us so much pain," Prabhupada said. "What is the difficulty? He didn't see the necessity for Mr. Price at all. Why don't we purchase directly from the owners? Why all these agents?" "It's just the way it's done here," Brahmananda said. Alan Coleman was a record producer. He had read the article in the East Village Other about the Swami from India and the mantra he had brought with him. When he had read the Hare Krishna mantra on the front page, he had become attracted. The article gave the idea that one could get a tremendous high or ecstasy from chanting. The Swami's Second Avenue address was given in the article. So one night in November, Alan and his wife visited the storefront. Alan: "There were about 30 pairs of shoes in the back of the room, people in the front and shoes in the back. We took off our shoes and sat down. Everyone was seated and very quiet. Front and center was a chair, and everyone was staring at this chair. Even then, we felt a certain energy in the room. No one was saying anything, and everyone was staring at the chair. The next thing was our first sight of the Swami. He came in and sat down on the chair, and there was a tremendous surge of energy. The Swami began chanting, and it was a very beautiful sound. Swamiji had this little drum he was hitting, very penetrating and exciting. One of the devotees was holding up a sign with the chant written on it so everyone could follow. Then the devotees got up and danced in a circle, a special dance with steps to it. The Swami was looking around the room, and he seemed to smile as he looked at you, as if to encourage you to join. The next day, Alan phoned Prabhupada to propose that he make a record of the chanting. But it was Brahmananda who answered the phone, and he gave Alan an appointment with the Swami that evening. So again, Alan and his wife went down to the East Village, which to them was the neighborhood where things were happening. If you wanted to have some excitement, you went down to the East Village. When they entered the Swami's room, he was seated at his typewriter, working. As soon as Alan mentioned his idea about making a record, Prabhupada was interested. "Yes," he said, "we must record. If it will help us distribute the chanting of Hare Krishna, then it is our duty." They scheduled the recording for 2 weeks later, in December, at the Adelphi recording studio near Times Square. Alan's wife was impressed by how enthusiastically the Swami had gotten to the point of making the record. He had so much energy and ambition in his plans. It was the night before the recording date. A boy walked into the storefront for the evening kirtan, carrying a large, two-headed Indian drum. This was not unusual, as guests often brought drums, flutes, and other instruments. Yet this time, Swamiji seemed particularly interested. The boy sat down and was preparing to play when Prabhupada motioned for the boy to bring him the drum. The boy didn't move. He wanted to play it himself. But Brahmananda went over and said, "Swamiji wants to play the drum." So the boy gave in. Brahmananda. Swamiji began to play, and his hands were just dancing on the drum. Everyone was stunned that Swamiji knew how to do this. All we had seen was the bongo drum, so I thought it was the proper Indian drum. But when this two-headed drum came out of nowhere, and Swamiji started playing it like a master musician, it created an ecstasy 100 times more than the bongo drum had. After the kirtan, Prabhupada asked the boy if he could borrow the drum for the recording session the next night. The boy at first was reluctant, but the devotees promised to return his drum the next day, so he agreed and said he would bring the drum the next evening. When he left the storefront that night with his drum under his arm, the devotees thought they would never see the boy or his drum again. But the next day, a few hours before Swamiji was to leave for the studio, the boy returned with his drum. It was a cold December night. The Swami, dressed in his usual saffron dhoti, a tweed overcoat, and a pair of grey shoes, which had long since replaced his original white, pointy rubber ones, got into Rupanuga's VW van with about 15 of his followers and their instruments and started for the recording studio, Brahmananda. We didn't start recording right away because there was a group ahead of us, so we went out for a walk in Times Square. We were just standing there with Swamiji, seeing all the flashing lights and all the sense gratification, when a woman came up to Swamiji and said, "Oh, hello, where do you come from?" in a very loud, matronly way. And Swamiji said, "I am a monk from India." And she said, "Oh, that's wonderful. Glad to meet you." And then she shook Swamiji's hand and left. At the studio, everyone accepted the devotees as a regular music group. One of the rock musicians asked them what the name of their group was, and Hayagriva laughed and replied, "The Hare Krishna chanters." Of course, most of the devotees weren't actually musicians, and yet the instruments they brought with them, a tambura, a large harmonium loaned by Allen Ginsberg, and rhythm instruments were ones they had played during kirtans for months. So as they entered the studio, they felt confident that they could produce their own sound. They just followed their Swami. He knew how to play, and they knew how to follow him. They weren't just another music group. It was music, but it was also chanting, meditation, worship. Prabhupada sat on a mat in the center of the studio, while the engineers arranged the microphones and assigned each devotee a place to sit according to his particular instrument. They asked for only 2 pairs of kartalas, and they approved of the pairs of rhythm sticks, but they wanted several devotees clapping their hands. Rupanuga's usual instrument was a pair of brass Indian bells with the tongues removed, and when the engineer saw them, he came over and said, "Let me hear that." Rupanuga played them, and they passed. Since Ravindra Swarup would be playing the drone on the harmonium, he sat apart with his own microphone, and Kirtanananda also had a microphone for the tambura. When the engineers were satisfied, they cued the devotees, and Swamiji began chanting and playing his drum. The cymbals and sticks and clapping hands joined him, and the chanting went on steadily for about 10 minutes, until an engineer came out of the glass studio and stopped them. Brahmananda was clapping too loudly, creating an imbalance. The engineer went back into his studio, put on his headphones, balanced everyone, and cued them for a second take. This time it was better. The first sound was the tambura, with its plucked, reverberating twang. An instant later, Swamiji began beating the drum and singing, "Vandeham Shri Guru." Then the whole ensemble put out to sea. The tambura, the harmonium, the clackers, the cymbals, Rupanuga's bells, Swamiji's solo singing, pushing off from their moorings, out into a fair weather sea of chanting. Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Swamiji's voice in the studio was very sweet. His boys were feeling love, not just making a record. There was a feeling of success and union, a crowning evening to all their months together. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. After a few minutes of singing prayers alone, Swamiji paused briefly while the instruments continued pulsing, and then began the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It was pure Bhaktivedanta Swami, expert, just like his cooking in the kitchen, like his lectures. The engineers liked what they heard. It would be a good take if nothing went wrong. The instruments were all right, the drum, the singing. The harmony was rough, but this was a special record, a happening. The Hare Krishna chanters were doing their thing, and they were doing it all right. Alan Coleman was excited. Here was an authentic sound. Maybe it would sell. After a few rounds of the mantra, the devotees began to feel relaxed, as though they were back in the temple, and they were able to forget about making mistakes on the record. They just chanted, and the beat steadied into a slightly faster pace. The word Hare would come sometimes with a little shout in it, but there were no emotional theatrics in the chorus, just a straight response to the Swami's melody. 10 minutes went by. The chanting went faster, louder and faster. Swamiji doing more fancy things on the drum, until suddenly everything stopped, with the droning note of the harmonium lingering. Alan came out of the studio. It was great, Swami, great. Would you like to just go right ahead and read the address now? Or are you too tired? With polite concern, pale, befreckled Alan Coleman peered through his thick glasses at the Swami. Swamiji appeared tired, but he replied, "No, I am not tired." Then the devotees sat back in the studio to watch and listen as Prabhupada read his prepared statement. As explained on the cover of the record album, the sympathetic devotees thought that Swamiji, despite his accent, sounded perfectly clear, reading from his script like an elocutionist. This transcendental vibration by chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the sublime method for reviving our Krishna consciousness. The language was philosophic, and the kind of people who usually walked out of the temple as soon as the kirtans ended, before the Swami could even speak a word, would also not appreciate the speech on their record album. As living spiritual souls, Swamiji preached, we are all originally Krishna conscious entities, but due to our association with matter from time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted by material atmosphere. The devotees listened submissively to the words of their spiritual master, while at the same time trying to comprehend the effect this would have on the audience. Certainly, some people would turn it off at the very mention of a spiritual nature. Swamiji continued reading, explaining that the chanting would deliver one from the sensual, the mental, and the intellectual planes, and bring one to the spiritual realm. We have seen it practically, he continued. Even a child can take part in the chanting, or even a dog can take part in it. The chanting should be heard, however, from the lips of a pure devotee of the Lord, and he continued reading on to the end. No other means, therefore, of spiritual realization is as effective in this age as chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Alan again came rushing out of the studio. It was fine, he said. He explained that they had recorded a little echo into the speech to make it special for the listener. Now he pushed back his glasses with his finger. We've got about 10 minutes left on the side with the speech. Would you like to chant again, or is it too late, Swamiji? Prabhupada smiled. No, it was not too late. He would chant the prayers to his spiritual master. While his disciples lounged around the studio, watching their spiritual master and the technical activity of the engineers behind the glass, Prabhupada began singing. Again, the harmonium's drone began, then the tambura and drum, but with a much smaller rhythm group than before. He sang through without any retakes, and then ended the song and the evening with a fortissimo drumming as the hand-pumped organ notes faded. Again, Alan came out and thanked the Swami for being so patient and such a good studio musician. Prabhupada was still sitting. Now we are tired, he admitted. Suddenly, over the studio sound system came a playback of the Hare Krishna chanting, complete with echo. When Prabhupada heard the successful recording of his chanting, he became happy and stood and began dancing, swaying back and forth, dipping slightly from the waist, his arms upraised in the style of Lord Chaitanya, dancing in ecstasy. The scheduled performance was over, but now Swamiji was making the best performance of the evening from his spontaneous feelings. As he danced, his half-asleep disciples became startled and also rose to their feet and joined him dancing in the same style. And in the recording booth behind the glass, the engineers also raised their hands and began dancing and chanting. Now you have made your best record, Swamiji. Now you have made your best record, Swamiji told Mr. Culman as he left the studio for the freezing Manhattan evening. Swamiji got into the front seat of the Volkswagen bus while the Hare Krishna chanters climbed into the back with their instruments, and Rupanuga drove them back home, back to the Lower East Side. The next morning, Prabhupada didn't get up. He was exhausted. Kirtanananda, who was personally serving him, became alarmed when the Swami said something about his heart skipping and about not being able to move. For the first time, it became apparent that he was overexerting himself. Kirtanananda thought back through the fall and summer when the Swami had led them all on hours-long kirtans in the park or on late evening benches. They had come to take it for granted. But now Kirtanananda saw that there was cause to be worried for Swamiji's health. Swamiji had no appetite for lunch, although by afternoon he regained his appetite and usual activity. That same day, a letter arrived from Mukunda in San Francisco, not long after their wedding. Mukunda and Janaki had left for the west coast. Mukunda had told Swamiji that he wanted to go on to India to study Indian music, but after a few weeks in southern Oregon, he had ended up in San Francisco. Now he had a better idea. He wanted to rent a place and invite Swamiji to come and start his Hare Krishna movement in the Haight-Ashbury district, just as he was doing on the Lower East Side. He said that the prospects there for Krishna consciousness were very good. On hearing this, Prabhupada began unfolding his expansive plans. They should open temples not only in San Francisco, but one by one all over the world, even in Russia and China. It's interesting because, those countries which we thought, it says here, even in Russia and China. Of course, they are big countries, but maybe at the time they would have been thought to be some of the least likely countries for Krishna consciousness to spread. But now we see that these countries are, Krishna consciousness is expanding in these countries probably more than any other country. Obviously India is there, but we see so many devotees from Russia and China nowadays. So it's quite amazing. So they should open temples not only in San Francisco, but one by one all over the world, even in Russia and China, and print the Bhagavad Gita in different languages. And he would translate all the volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam into English and take a party of devotees back to India. The devotees who heard him were amazed. Kirtanananda, who had seen the alarming symptoms of Prabhupada's ill health, began to forget what he had thought earlier that morning. If Krishna desired, Kirtanananda thought Swamiji could do anything. A little bit more. When Prabhupada came down to hold his morning class on November 19th, he carried a large red book instead of the usual brown one, but no one noticed the difference. He began, as always, softly singing prayers to his spiritual master and accompanying himself with a faint rhythm on his bongo. The neighbors were still asleep. The weather was cold, but the steam radiators kept the storefront warm. There would be no more outdoor chanting now. In Manhattan, the city opens wide in the summer and shuts tight in the winter, which for the evening classes meant no more noisy children outside the door. And although the morning classes had always been quiet, even in the summer, now, with the winter approaching, the group became a tighter, more committed core of sincere students coming together to hear Swamiji speak. It was now 4 months since he had begun ISKCON. At which address?
22nd Avenue.
Sorry?
26.
26, 2nd Avenue. He had held 3 separate initiations and initiated 19 devotees. Most of them had become serious, although a few remained casual visitors. Now, in these morning classes, Swamiji wanted to instruct them more about how to become devotees. He led the chanting of Hare Krishna for 20 minutes, cautioning them to respond softly so that the neighbors would not pour water through the ceiling again, although they hadn't done it lately. Prabhupada always tried to cooperate with the tenants, but occasionally someone would start a petition, which never amounted to much, against the devotees. Sometimes Prabhupada would help the landlord, Mr. Chute, by taking out other tenants' garbage or just giving him a hand. Mr. Chute was a husky, beer-bellied Polish refugee who lived alone in an apartment on the 1st floor. Mr. Chute respected the Swami for his age and scholarship, and Swamiji was always amiable with him. Whenever Mr. Chute came to the apartment, he would never take his shoes off, and Prabhupada would always say, "That's all right, that's all right." And one time, when the plumbing didn't work in Prabhupada's apartment, Prabhupada went downstairs and took a shower in Mr. Chute's apartment. But Swamiji also considered Mr. Chute a classic example of a foolish materialist, because although he had spent his life savings to buy this building, he still had to work so hard. Swamiji said he was a fool for having spent his savings to buy such a rundown building. Because the building was in such a poor condition, he had to work like an ass to keep it up. This is how the materialists work, Swamiji would say. Mr. Chute, although respectful to the Swami, didn't like the devotees. Prabhupada told his disciples, "Treat him as if he were your father." So that's what they did. Any time they would have to deal with Mr. Chute, they would approach him saying, "We are your sons." Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So maybe we can just spend a couple of minutes to share some realizations. So the first part of the reading was talking about potential building, which could be a temple. I can't remember if the devotees got that actual. We'll have to find out, unless anyone remembers. We can find out as we go through the reading whether they got that. The building, yeah, they were talking about a good downtown location near young people, but in an area where uptown people would feel safe. It's interesting. Yeah. So when I was reading that, I was thinking a lot of the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada and the devotees is, being in a place and trying to get a property. The first official temple was the Matchless Gifts, 26 2nd Avenue. And Rasikananda Maharaj was there recently, did a program. And so that mood of like finding a place and just doing simple, nice kirtan and focusing on kirtan. Maybe some little talk, some prasadam. So that's like, especially during the early days, it was like a common theme. Like Prabhupada started a place, and then it said later on that Mukunda and Janaki, they ended up in the West Coast in San Francisco, so they were going to start a place there. So yeah, it's quite, in some ways it seems more like, of course there were difficulties, but when you're starting something new, maybe it's like, you have challenges, but in some ways it's simple as well. You just have a place and start something simple and it goes from there. What do you think, Harini?
Yeah, I think it's like, actually we can preach anywhere, wherever we are, just like, it just depends on our desire. Like everything is possible at any stage, any ashram, any age, any occupation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he was saying that everyone should preach, whether we are Vyasta, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. And we can see by the example of Srila Prabhupada, like that nothing stopped him, like ever. He was just like, something wouldn't work, he would go to the next thing. Like he would never waste his time, and by his purity he would attract so much people. So that's another thing. I think it's like we should also try to become as much pure as we can, and in that way the preaching will be successful.
Yeah, so it's kind of exciting when there's like a new center. Like how long has the tourist center been going now? Like a year or something?
The tourist?
The tours collective 108.
It's a tourist thing. Less than 1 year.
Oh, less than 1 year. Yeah. But I always enjoyed those programs. Like if I was traveling with Maharaj or something, then of course temple. It's nice. Programs in temples are always nice, but when it's like a program with new people or in a new place and it's kind of simple kirtan, simple philosophy, then it's also like a different mood and it's quite exciting as well. So it's very nice. Yeah, so they're talking about the building, and then Prabhupada, as we know, he was always very expert in getting the buildings and getting it for a cheap price, or getting a good deal on the building. Like I think it was in somewhere in America. I can't remember if it was Dallas or anyway, somewhere, or Chicago maybe it was Chicago. And there was like a really fancy building, and Prabhupada tricked them, like mesmerized them, and convinced the agent to sell it at a really, really cheap price. And after it was done, the agent couldn't believe what had happened, that he sold the building for such a low price. It's like Prabhupada hypnotized them. So that was also a common theme. Prabhupada would always be very expert in getting the buildings. And then a lot of the reading was talking about the kirtan recording with Prabhupada and the devotees. So there's nice descriptions of all the musical instruments, the clapping, the chanting, like that.
Which chapter is?
It's called Beyond the Lower East Side, Volume 1. I don't know if it has a number of the chapter. Yeah, I guess it does. Let me see. It's chapter 21.
21.
21, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Mahadevi, any realizations from the chanting section? Any realizations from the chanting? You know, Prabhupada's and the devotees there in the studio, and they got, what instruments did they have? Anyone remember what instruments?
Yes.
What instruments?
A large harmonium.
Large harmonium, nice.
Clapping.
Yeah.
Some kind of drum and some kind of bells.
Yeah, good. You
That's
got
it.
most of them?
And rhythm sticks.
Yeah. Any other instruments? Tambura. Vishnu, what is a tambura?
Yeah, tambura is the instrument that looks like a sitar,
Yeah.
but it's not meant for like this, but it's meant to keep it straight, and then you just play like this.
So they had clapping, they had the tambura, the karatals, and what was this two-headed drum that was mentioned?
The rhythm drum.
Probably a mridanga, I guess, but I don't know.
It looks like a mini tabla. The
tabla. Yeah. Was it that fixed?
Yeah, kind of.
One. Okay, so not a mridanga.
But like a mini version. The proper
Mini version.
was using in Talking Square Park.
Yeah. And who did they borrow the harmonium from?
Did you mention it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good answer.
Yeah. Allen Ginsberg. Tambura, large harmonium, learned by Allen Ginsberg. Rhythm instruments. Yeah. Kartals, devotees clapping hands. Rupanuga's usual instrument was a pair of brass Indian bells with the tongues removed. I don't know exactly what that is. Brass Indian bells. So maybe it's just like a bell with the thing taken out. Yeah?
I think
And then like
they just
playing it like this.
something, yeah.
Like a gong version. The gong version.
Yeah.
Down.
And can anyone remember, they were doing the recording, but then after 10 minutes, one of the engineers came out and stopped them.
Somebody was clapping too loud.
Who was clapping too loud?
I forgot his name. Somebody.
The big devotee.
Somebody in Poland.
Brahmananda was clapping too loudly.
Brahmananda.
So they stopped the kirtan. They did it again, rebalanced everything. Yeah. Okay. So, anyone like to share anything?
One phrase that Prabhupada said, I don't remember which one, in which part it is, it's like, he's helping to preach and we must do it. It's our duty to do it. I just find it interesting.
Can you say that again?
If he's helping to preach and we must do it, it's our duty to do it. Something like that.
Yeah, that does ring a bell. What was that? What was that talking about?
They were speaking about making a, how is this, English? No, like to make the recording.
Oh yeah.
That's it. Something interesting.
I don't know if I'll find it fast enough, but yes. As soon as Alan mentioned his idea about making a record, Prabhupada was interested. Yes, he said, we must record. If it will help us distribute the chanting of Hare Krishna, then it is our duty. It's a nice point. Okay. So we'll end there for today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.